So yeah, if you haven't followed my Twitter a while ago, I got a PS4. As Destiny, the Taken King was coming out, and people were seemingly praising the hell out of it, I promised myself that I'd go and give it a try to see once and for all if Destiny was even worth it. Since the day this game was even announced, that fateful E3, I had some interest in it, before the eventual disappointments came. And now that there are games coming out on PS4 that I'd be interested in, now's a good time as any to get the damn console and review the game that I've agreed with many as being meh, because the only way to really tell if something is good or bad is to actually experience it yourself. Now, of course, I have no capture card or any of that fancy tech other game reviewers use, and my current setup is not game reviewer friendly anyway, so this is all coming from SharePlay. And no, this does not mean you can request game reviews through Patreon. Given how these things work, this would be at my own accord, and for my first time actually doing something like this, I'm making it special. No animal themes this time. This be a special pre-mid-season 4 thing. Now, of course, there's a lot to talk about on this game, things that I may not have gotten to in my run of the game, and from what kept my motivation going. So I'm going to lay down some ground rules for this review. First, this will be in 3 parts, with part 1 being dedicated to base game Destiny's campaign. Part 2 will cover the remaining campaigns, and part 3 will cover everything else that I don't mention during either one. Secondly, not everything will be covered from personal experience, which may relate to raids and strikes that I either didn't have time for, or didn't have the motivation to do, but will still bring up on relation to previous game experiences. Speaking of, thirdly, I reserve the right to reference any other game, regardless of genre, for certain gameplay mechanics or elements. Lastly, I will say now that I am not the best Destiny player in the world. I am certainly no uber elite expert. I am just a regular gamer who plays whatever I want to play, however I want to play, but will admit to when I suck at certain things. I will still give it the benefit it deserves when noted. So with that, let's begin my Destiny experience with the very first campaign to exist. Vanilla Destiny. When you start it up for the first time, you get to create your character, starting with one of 3 classes. Titan, the heavy DPS/tank of the game. Hunter, the fast and agile ranged class, and personal pick for this run. And Warlock, the magic-like class specializing in arcane energy. Each one has their own unique abilities and a special equipment slot, like the Hunter Cloaks, as well as 2 subclasses to start with before gaining a third with the recent expansion. After that, we get to customize the character's race and facial features. You got humans, you got exos, who are human-made constructs that act like humans, and Awoken, who were humans that were transformed by something while escaping the darkness or something. Yeah, unfortunately, none of the races have any unique abilities or buffs of their own like in other games where race can affect how you play a class. You'd think the cosmetics would be a bit more extensive then, but not really. They don't even have different body types, and hell, you can't even name your character. It takes whatever your PSN or Xbox Live tag or whatever it's called, and that kinda takes away from players who want to roleplay or make their characters resemble someone else for fun. I mean, that's the kind of thing people love doing in games like Dragon Ball Xenoverse, or any game with customization. Well, at any rate, now we get treated to the cinematics. In the past, humanity discovered a large sphere-like being on the surface of Mars, called the Traveler. It granted humanity a golden age of where technology thrived, lifespans expanded, planets terraformable, and just centuries of being able to be among the stars. Only then for the darkness, comprised of aliens seeking the Traveler, to come and take away the light. A long time passes since the Traveler ceased function, and soon a remnant of the Traveler, a ghost if you will, has come to find you.
There you are.
So this ghost, voiced by Nolan North, has revived you and briefly tells us what is going on.
Well, you've been dead a long time. So you're going to see a lot of things you won't understand. This is Fallen territory. We aren't safe here. I have to get you to the city.
So yeah, not much is told about your character. Am I a civilian? A soldier? A space badass? What? Actually, this leads to a major problem with the game's narrative. They tend to just rush through certain details while giving very vague descriptions or exposition points that try to pass themselves off as plot development. Yet you get very little in the way of character interaction the further you go into the campaign. It would also help clarify when I died or whatever, because I don't know if my character knows what Fallen are, what the earlier terms were. It's like, shut up and play space FPS! So we go through the tutorial section essentially. We get our first weapon, and we get to shoot up some aliens. As far as the controls go, they actually work well. It took me getting used to, as the last major FPS I played was Team Fortress 2 on PC. However, I slowly eased my way into the mechanics of the game to where most of the time, I can get it down just fine. I will admit that I often hit a button I shouldn't to throw like grenades or my knives later on like impulse. But still, as far as going up against AI opponents, I adapted just fine to where I can complete them without relying on other human players. As far as weapons go, you got your primary weapons, which are the ones you will use the most. Special weapons that do more damage, but whose ammo is a bit more hard to come by. I personally like using the sniper rifle the most. And finally, the heavy weapons, which do the absolute most damage, but the ammo is even rarer. I personally use the machine guns for that type. Every piece of gear will have an attack or defense stat, while weapons will have your standard weapon stats that determine things like stability, rate of fire, and the like. Rarity will also determine what kind of secondary stats it may have, or special ability unlocks that the gear piece has that can improve the performance of your character. It works in line with leveling your subclass as well. As you gain experience, your subclass will grow in level, which allow you to unlock new abilities relating to that spec. When you're just leveling up one subclass for the first time, it's as natural as leveling your character. But if you want to level up the other subclasses, well, that gets trickier because it takes a long time to build up enough experience to do so. I should also mention that when I first started playing, I ended up using the Spark of Light thing I got for buying the Destiny bundle, which jumped me to level 25. Until Taken King, I decided to make a new character so I can start from the beginning while going through the campaign. Because if I'm going to do this experience, it should be from scratch and not through a gimmick. For now, I end up killing the first boss of the game and escape in a ship, soon arriving at the last remaining human city on Earth, the City. What is this, Arc 5? Is this the future Synchro Dimension timeline? It's here I get to meet some important NPCs, including the class leaders, who all just sell you stuff and or give you quests to do. I have to go back to the Cosmodrome to get a warp drive so I can go outside Earth. Hence, we get to orbit. This acts like your mission selection screen. You pick the mission you want to do, even if you've already done it, as there's a hard mode to everything. Then, you take off for the destination. Now, like you would in the city, the maps let you see other players running around doing your usual MMO-like ordeals. From killing enemies, gathering materials found all over, and doing patrol missions that involve killing a group of enemies or doing some scouting. Otherwise, what's different, depending on mission, is that some areas have what are called darkness zones. These are essentially checkpoint areas meant to relate to the current mission you're on, because while other players may go to the same locations as you, they don't always land in the same instanced area as you. Another thing about darkness zones is that while outside them, when you die, you can res not too far off from that point and just continue what you were doing. Here, if you die, you have to start over whatever it was you were doing when you first entered the zone. So again, checkpoint system. Soon we start seeing more than just fallen/kill enemies, as we get introduced to the Hive, who are supposedly like these undead aliens that mostly hang out on the moon. But given their eventually revealed gods, they've made their presence on Earth since their disappearance from the collapse. I guess. It doesn't help that the exposition in this game is so low-key that you don't really feel connected enough to care. Your Ghost in the Shell or whatever? I mean, it isn't a shell after all. He's practically the only character in the campaign who actively talks to you about anything, and it's mostly just to explain stuff that's already happened in the past. Details about things that don't get fully explored on. It just feels like they're feeding this to you while you're just shooting stuff and not paying any mind to it. In fact, as far as world building goes, there's an extreme lack of depth to it. None of the casual NPCs tell you anything other than just randomly greeting you. There's barely any conversations going on. It's like, what's going on in this world? Any news? No? Nothing? You want to know anything about this world? Go to the Grimoire. The Grimoire is basically the achievement system that also happens to have tidbits on things relating to the cards you get. Where is the Grimoire though? Why, it's on Bungie's website. Why make us leave the game to learn about stuff? That breaks immersion. That's something I do if I need to look up something for reference, like with a fan wiki. Not just because they gave me some world-changing info and I can't see it unless I stop playing. And don't expect those important NPC characters to tell you much either. Until Taken King, the class leaders are pretty much there to look important and never really act like it outside of the few lines of dialogue they tend to give at times. Hell, if there was a way to perfectly describe vanilla Destiny, well, listen to this. The speaker, the supposed voice of the Traveler, tells you how when the Traveler's light faded, ghosts were born, and they went about awaking dead people to become guardians, just to fight the darkness. How and why did this all happen, though?
I could tell you of the great battle centuries ago. How the Traveler was crippled. I could tell you of the power of the darkness, its ancient enemy. There are many tales told throughout the city to frighten children. Lately, those tales have stopped. Now, the children are frightened anyway. The darkness is coming back. We will not survive it this time.
So, in other words,
I know what I know, boy, but I'm not telling it.
What can I do?
You must push back the darkness. Guardians are fighting on Earth and beyond. Join them. Your ghost will guide you. I only hope he chose wisely.
So my character is pretty much just gonna run right in with no explanation on what anything is, all because I have a gun. And guns solve everything. You know, at least in Xenoblade X, you at least learned stuff at the same time as other characters, and that helped in world building. And you even start learning things about what your character may be to better explain why he or she is doing anything. Here, I find it hard to believe that a dead guy would want to suddenly take part in this grand battle with no other personal reason when you don't even know if it was the darkness that took you in the first place. What am I fighting for besides humanity? At least say I have lost memories. Do something to make this seem legit. But hey, it's cool. At least the graphics and music look good. Yeah, they at least make you forget about plot and instead make you wish you could go down there into the city instead. Let me down there! Damn it! While doing missions or whatever, random events can occur. Whether it be protecting something or killing a really big enemy after killing hordes of other enemies, you do get some nice experience and reputation, and it's generally better when max level characters are nearby to help you max rank them. They do offer some variety that way, which is a nice change up every now and then. But speaking of hordes, it feels like 90% of the game's encounters are nothing but hordes of enemies. You trigger an event, fight a couple waves of enemies, move on. Then you do it again, and again, and again, sometimes even during boss fights. And since bosses can use the same patterns as each other, they pretty much have little variation. Oh, well, that's not entirely true. At least when they give you new aliens to fight, then the style might be different. Like the Vex. These organic machine aliens, they tend to have cores you need to shoot first to further weaken them. And the Cabal, who are giant turtle rhino men, who take a lot of hits unless you know to headshot them. While some carry large shields you have to bypass somehow. Nevertheless, there's only so few enemy types per alien race, and they tend to function similarly all the damn time. Now, the same can be said for any game where they reuse enemy types or models, but generally the gameplay tends to vary up to where it makes it feel fresh. Like with the Bayonetta games, you have tons of ways to go about killing things that it becomes a satisfying experience. Playing through Destiny, though, just feels like a chore, especially when there's not much story to look forward to. If the game starts feeling like a chore, then you start losing interest. And while other people might not find this a chore, and yet feel the same way for games I like, well, maybe that's true, and that's gaming for you. Some things just seem more interesting than others, despite the flaws like this. So after many missions of battling Kel and Hive, while slowly piecing together history that I can't really become attached to because of how little there is, I eventually get an actual plot from a mysterious stranger. An exo-stranger to be precise, who was spying on me a few times now. She tells me to go into the Temple of Crota to see what's inside, and sure enough, it looks like the Hive were draining the Traveler's light or something. Then I go to Venus, where her transmission was from, and encounter the Vex for the first time. And soon I meet her. Alright, who are you, and why were you watching me this whole time?
I don't even have time to explain why I don't have time to explain.
Story of my life. Come on, you don't even get to be in this game for much longer. Don't you dare pull this on me now! But yeah, it looks like she's working for someone. She doesn't have a ghost, so she can't be a guardian. Little things that if she were in this game long enough, I could maybe care. But no, nothing. Nothing about her is intriguing enough to where I'd be that curious for a long-term relation. She's just like the speaker. Uninteresting, and leads to nothing major. She tells me I need to find the Black Garden and stop the Vex from completely draining the Traveler. And Ghost tells us we need to see the Awoken. So we travel to the Reef. Cue Independence Day flashbacks. And hello, new characters!
The Queen herself judges who may or may not enter the realm. Me? I see.
Wait, aren't you that one guy from the trailer? Oh well, they seem like they could be interesting, which is a first. Sadly, their names aren't revealed at all. Hell, the Grimoire even called them the Queen and the Queen's brother prior to House of Wolves, I believe. And sadly, don't get any other major appearances in the campaign after our second visit to them. Yeah, see, in order to find the Black Garden, we have to kill a Gate Lord. So we set out and find one. Of course, the Gate Lord is a pain in the ass because enemies keep coming out at certain health percentages, and there's hardly anywhere to hide without getting shot by the boss. That's another problem I have with these fights. When in tight quarters, you have little room to cover. You have to keep moving and jumping and pray you don't get hit. Otherwise, it means having to restart the last checkpoint. And believe me, up until a bit earlier, I had it easy. But soon comes the part where I die. A lot. But hey, at least that's one Gate Lord enemy I'll never see again. Right? Anyway, we bring the head back to the siblings. They tell me I need to go to Meridian Bay on Mars. They say I would need to help them later, and that's all they wrote. Yeah, apart from the bounty quests or whatever Bungie had relating to the Queen, that was pretty much all you did for her. You don't even see her anymore until Taken King, as far as I've noticed. In less than 10 minutes, I learned hardly anything about them as a whole. I learned more about the Gawcats from Xenoblade X in that same amount of time than I did these two. So now it comes to Mars, where the Cabal mainly dominate. I have to power up the Gate Lord's head again so I can open the way to the Black Garden, and once I do cross into that realm, I notice that the area kinda looks like either the planet Cyclo or Space Australia. Anyway, here is where things get crazy. Now, partly due to me being like a level or two under the recommended one at first, I would die so many times either out of carelessness or enemies overwhelming me when they shouldn't. And because you don't refill on ammo when you die, it can really suck not having all that heavy ammo on hand. I suppose it would help to buy them ammo cartridges from shopkeepers, but at that point I didn't want to restart the whole level, so I just pressed on. Word to the wise, it would be worth your time buying those since they can save you the agony of praying for the right ammo to drop. Something I also forgot to mention up to this point is that each subclass has a super ability. Like here, I get a golden gun and can take down mini-bosses and drain boss health quite easily. It takes a while for the gauge to build up, which can be reduced through the intellect stat, and killing enemies with it grants orbs of light that help any player charge up the meter faster. Let me just say, it's super helpful, but like ammo, hope you don't die after using it, because if you used it getting past a tough enemy, well, yeah. And now we come to the final encounters of the game. It's time to stop the Vex from summoning their god, draining the Traveler or whatever. Let's kill them all! After doing just that, we fight the Soul Progeny, I guess, but wait, doesn't it look like the Gate Lord we killed? Well, upon further inspection, it seems they all occupy the Minotaur class of Vex. And these guys just have slightly different models from each other, but nevertheless, they seem to act very close to each other, so essentially, it's like a repeat fight done 3 times in a row. And let me tell you, when you have enemies spawning all over through the same health percentage spawn rates as before, ledges that I can't really see and fall through if I step too far back, this was one of the most time-consuming and most annoying fights in the campaign. Thank God each boss was a checkpoint. Otherwise, I would have just quit playing right there. And in the end, after all that, what kind of ending do I get? Well, the speaker says that the Traveler is slowly becoming active, I guess. And then the Exo Stranger comes and gives me her weapon that she never once used. And then... So, was she the Traveler incarnate? Was she a special ghost? What the hell was that? Well, seeing as how we don't ever see her again, not even in Taken King, that means it's a plot line that will remain unexplored. Like, no! You can't do that! You haven't earned the right to bait us like that! If you want to foreshadow stuff, you have to make sure the build-up and payoff becomes worth it. You have to prove to us that even the little things can lead to something bigger. Hell, One Piece has been doing that for like... ever! Yet you can't even keep me interested in this one character to make me wonder what she's all about past this one game. None of the other characters too, for that matter. So really, the campaign at this point is shown to be really shallow and unsatisfying. This is the kind of plot that would work for vanilla WoW, but only because the game was built off pre-existing story material, and the context being you were an adventurer getting caught up in the events going on at the time. In this game's case, we're just being introduced to the world, so there's hardly anything to go on. The only thing they care for is the PvP aspect of things, and when we get to that, well, that'll be something to behold. But until then, we still have 3 more campaigns to cover, so check back in part 2, where we do just that.
SpaceMonkeyMafiaStudios.com.
What is that?
What the fucking environment is this?
What is this? You killed these guys!
How would you put 2 together?
What the hell?
Why is she here?
Our fight is far from over.
When's she gonna tell me about some Greasy Steve?